Hey everybody, what's up? This is Solo Fighter, and yet again we are here to finish off our second part of our UFC MMA year in review for 2017. Last time we left off at UFC 214, and today we are going to finish the MMA year in review. So, yet again, this is G here, and hey, if we have Cyrus here, as usual, Cyrus.
What's up, everybody? It's been a while. It's glad, good to be back, guys.
All right, yep, definitely good to be back. And I mean, let's get it, continued on. And we're going to be talking about UFC 215, Eunice versus Shevchenko 2. I mean, really, that was definitely a fight that a lot of people had to watch, considering the last matchup between Eunice and Shevchenko, and it had, Rafael dos Anjos, it had Henry Cejudo, Tyson Pedro going on, like a bunch of really good fights on that card. And I'm going to have to say that, watching Pedro and Latifi and having the fun fight of Stefan versus Melendez on the card as well. I'm gonna have to say for me that card was probably about an 8. Just being able to see Rafael
Yeah,
dos Anjos and Henry Cejudo, fight on this card, considering their overall MMA skills, and then watching
yeah,
Eunice versus Shevchenko, which a lot of people seem to kind of like overlook because who knows why. That was definitely an amazing fight, and I'm gonna have to say that main event fight between Shevchenko and Eunice, even though it was split, I'm gonna personally say that I believe that Shevchenko won. If you all wouldn't agree with me, go on about it. But what do you think, Cyrus?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I thought she'd won. It was very close, and Shevchenko made a couple mistakes. Like I believe it was in the fifth round. She caught Amanda's neck. She got hold of Amanda's neck and tried to, like an overharm throw, an over, you know, she tried a throw that didn't work out because she landed, on her back, and Nunes was able to, to get on top, and but even that, despite that mistake and the fact that Valentina could have been more aggressive at certain moments of the fight, she still, I mean, in my personal opinion, she had enough to win that fight. She done enough, but judges obviously saw it differently and whatever. You talk. Shahudo was on that card as well, wasn't he? And he fought Wilson Heiss, right?
Yes, he did.
Right. That was a
Pretty
great
good
fight. The
fight
way he
too.
knocked him out, the way he knocked out Wilson Heiss, that was. Then Tyson Pedro, I believe, lost that fight to the Swedish fighter, very popular. Lots of people like him. He's quite a likable dude. But if I'm not mistaken, that was his first loss in MMA, and
Yep, Latifi.
that was another decision I didn't agree with. Yeah, he lost to, if I'm not mistaken, he lost to Alexander Gustafsson's training partner.
Yeah, are you talking about Ilir Latifi, right?
Yeah, that's the one, right? Like he lost that.
Yeah, yeah. Pedro
Yeah.
lost to Latifi
No,
in that
overall, it
card.
was a really good event. It was, well, it's a shame because again, like so many other events last year, like we had some great events last year, but most of them didn't sell because the UFC either didn't promote them or like almost like sabotage their own stuff. Like, Dana went on a rant about how already what he said about the Mighty Mouse wasn't good, so it was already, struggling to get any kind of traction because nobody had much interest because the original headliner was supposed to be Mighty Mouse versus Board. Dana spent the whole summer talking crap about Mighty Mouse, so already the card was had its work cut out for it to sell and to get as much attention as possible. And then I forget who. I believe it was Mighty Mouse or Boar. No, it was Boar, right? Who a couple nights before the event he had to pull out because of weight cutting issues, which was whatever. And Dana as well had talked a lot of shit about Amanda Nunes. pulling out of UFC 213. So it was a bit, but otherwise, I enjoyed this card. I really did. I was really looking forward to the main event because you know I'm a huge Valentina fan, and I honestly believe that she'll, I mean, I still believe she'll be a champion, UFC champion. I have no doubt about it. But I
Yeah.
also am one of those who believes that she has a claim for being the greatest women's fighter in history because she's just that good. And I believe that when by the time it's all said and done, she will widely be recognized as the greatest woman to ever do it. So that's just my opinion, though. But yeah, it was a good fight. The main event was fun to watch. It could have been better, and Amanda Nunes, it was almost like she was fighting not to gas. She was like it was almost like the whole her lack of cardio and endurance was heavily on her mind, especially considering what happened the first time they fought. So it was almost like the whole time she was fighting against her her natural instincts to just let loose, like
Right.
call it respect or fear or whatever. But she definitely looked like she was like, I'm gonna finish this fight. I'm gonna have to go all 5 rounds. She's just that good. So let's not guess. And otherwise, still fun. It was technical, but I thought Valentina was the more aggressive fighter. I thought Valentina outstruck her pretty clearly when it came to significant strikes. And even when like Valentina made that mistake and ended up on her back in the fifth round, she was way more active. Like Amanda Nunes barely threw a strike on the ground. It was Valentina throwing elbows and punches and shoulder barges or whatever you want to call them, shoulder strikes from the bottom. So yeah, I agree with. I thought she won.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But like that's just one of those fights that a lot of people just decided that wasn't as interesting as it should have been, but they really should have watched because they really, really missed something special. And Valentina Shevchenko, especially since that was her fight before she decided to go down to 125, and look what happened. That's all I'm gonna say about that card. So so I guess we'll move on to the next card.
Absolutely.
Next card, UFC 216. Ferguson versus Lee. Like we all know what this fight was supposed to be. Like here, you go ahead and talk about this card, Cyrus.
Oh man, that was such a great card. We had a whole podcast almost dedicated to that card, but yeah, no, it was the I called it the return of meritocracy. Like freaking Tony El Ferguson finally. I mean, even though they still couldn't get it quite right, like he should have been fighting for the lightweight title. He earned it. They at least gave him one of those, so legit interim titles, but it was a real title fight. Like if you watch the fight, there was no interim about it. It was a true title fight. It was like he was put under pressure by Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee brought it for all the trash talk and nonsense he comes up with. And I like the dude. However, a lot of people hold it against him that he talks all that trash.
Uh
But
huh.
he makes fights more interesting. Like people really want to kick his ass, and then the fight was always be better. So I love that dude. But there's something about El Kukui, man. The guy's special. There's greatness written all over him. He's nasty. He never stops. He's got cardio for days. He has legit one strike, one hitter quitter power. Like can knock you out with one punch. And then his jujitsu and his submission game is just so nasty. It's just wonderful to watch him. And it was wonderful to watch him get what he deserved because that guy's been toiling at it. He has a 10 fight winning streak or, 10 or 11 fight winning streak, and he's fought nothing but the best. And and yeah, man, it's just like what a great fight. It started off with Kevin Lee putting him under a lot of pressure, and then slowly but surely Kukui started getting back into the fights and started taking in over the fight. Kevin Lee started having troubles, issues like with endurance. He looked tired, and I mean, when we found out what was wrong with him afterwards, the staph infection, that it makes sense,
Yeah.
But they both fought like warriors, and then eventually Tony caught him in a submission hold and squeezed tight, and it was a great victory, and it made me so happy to see El Kukui get what he deserved. Like, I'm a huge Habib fan too, but like you can't hold the fact that Habib missed the fight against El Kukui, man. Like, El Kukui
Yeah.
showed up.
Fight
He
that.
was professional. He should have been given that shot at the title a long time ago. And I mean, the fact that he's an interim champion now, even though like interim belts mean nothing now more than ever. But come on, like that guy, they should have stripped McGregor a long time ago. It's been over 18 months now since he won the
With no
title he
fight
didn't
scheduled either.
deserve, and he hasn't. Like, enough is enough, and it was good to see like a true number one contender, a guy who earned everything he's got, get his get to the top of that mountain. It was a wonderful thing to witness. And of course, you had Demetrius Johnson, Mighty Mouse Johnson, coming up with one of the greatest subs ever in MMA history. It was spectacular. It was like watching a movie or something, or playing a video game. It was sick. It was beautiful, and I mean, Ray Borg's no joke. Even though I didn't think he should have been in that title fight. That's nothing against DJ. I'm not trying to say DJ fights easy fights. Like, Ray Borg's not easy for anybody. He's super strong. His grappling's nasty, and he always seems to know what he's doing. However, like, my problem was he shouldn't have been fighting, because the guy was just like one fight removed from a badly missed weight cut, and he's missed weight a couple times in his career. And like, the first fight was canceled, was postponed because he had trouble cutting weight. He got sick, so it was really weird. And oh, pardon me, I would have been happier seeing like someone like Benavidez, who's earned his shot at the title again, even though he's
Right.
lost twice
Again.
to Mighty Mouse. There were, Pettis Jr. I can't remember his first name, but Anthony Pettis' younger, Sergio Pettis. I would have rather seen him fight for the title. But, whatever reason, the UFC didn't want to play ball, so he ended up fighting Ray Borg in one of the greatest performances ever. It was a truly great night, and it was like, the whole night had exciting fights and great action, lots of stoppages. So yeah, it was just a feel good event.
Right. I mean, yeah, there were like definitely some really, really good fights on that card. I mean, you know, watching Lando Veneta and everything versus Bobby Green, even though they came to a draw and everything, that was a really fun fight to watch.
Great fight.
Watching Botelho and Gonzalez, that fight was super duper fun. And even watching John Moraga basically KO Bibuletov, that
Yeah.
was surprising.
No, man. Remember, we did a show like about a week before the event, and we all gave our picks. And I remember precisely picking Moraga, even though like he was going to be the underdog, because
Yeah.
Bibulatov is such a monster. But it was such a feel good win. I mean, the whole card was feel good, but that was special because that guy's been around for years, and he's never done less than give his best. So,
Yeah. I mean,
and he also
it
fought for
was
the
just
title. He's
craziness.
been given a lot of bad matchups. The UFC don't treat him very good. Like, they mistreat so many other fighters. So it was wonderful to see
Yeah, it was
him get that
definitely
win,
good to watch.
because
That's why I had to toss that in there as well.
yeah, yeah, no, it's like I remember picking him more out of how do you say, it was I wasn't thinking with my head. I was thinking like with my, I was picking, my heart was picking it, like, because I do like John Moraga. and I have a lot of respect for him. But also, I was also rooting for him, and it was awesome. The fact that he won against especially that guy, because that guy I know for a fact there's a lot of flyweights, an enormous amount of UFC flyweights who are avoiding him right now because he's
Yep.
just that Sambo
I
is
mean,
nasty.
and that's what I mean. I was like, it's just crazy, and and like I was saying, like the card was just really, really good. I mean, between Tony Ferguson and Kevin Lee and everything, just watching that type of fight where it's like, yes, Kevin Lee is here and he's getting somewhat of a title fight, and he gets to show, what he's been talking about, like, oh, hey, I'm gonna draw, like, hey, let me fight, like, let me get all these fans and everything, and he went out there and he actually proved that he could actually fight against a high level elite fighter like Tony Ferguson, but with that staph infection and everything, it just wasn't going to go his way anyways. And Tony Ferguson just
Yeah,
showed that just that like little bit much more is what makes him different than most other high class fighters like Kevin Lee. And that was just a really great fight to just see the technical aspect of MMA between Tony Ferguson and Kevin Lee. And then watching Demetrius Johnson versus Ray Borg, I mean, we all know what it was. Let's all be honest here. We all know what it was, but watching it and then seeing what Demetrius Johnson was able to do and actually did in that fight made it that much more special. Considering that a
yeah.
lot of people were planning and wanted to skip that fight, like whoever skipped that fight and had to watch it on highlights and everything, more power to you. But that was something special to watch live, as it was. So
I don't understand how you
yeah,
can skip
it
how you
was
can skip a
definitely up
Demetrius.
there.
Like that's a guy at the top of his of whatever, like watching
Yeah,
anybody who's the best at whatever is a privilege, whether you're a fan of his or not. Like you have to recognize. Like I guess it's you're right if you don't want to watch it because But I don't understand how people can hate on him like that because Demetrius Johnson is not a person that you can like. I've rooted against Demetrius Johnson before, like when he fought Uncle Creepy. I was hoping Uncle Creepy would win because I love the dude and he's fun and all, like he's an awesome fighter. And I
yeah,
thought, but that's just because I don't dislike Mighty Mouse. I was rooting for Uncle Creepy because I like the dude. I love Ian McCall, but but like to actively, I don't know. He's one of the greatest to ever do it, and he is the greatest at flyweight. He's the greatest flyweight ever, and possibly, he's in the conversation for the greatest of all time as well. Like he beat Anderson Silva's record. You can't you can't ignore that. You can't you can't dispute that. Like now, I know some people are trying to say, oh, he fought bums, and they were easy. The weight class is way too shallow. Like there is a lot of talent at flyweight, and he fought people. He didn't just fight a bunch of wrestlers or a bunch of grapplers. He fought everybody. He fought guys who hit so hard, who hit as hard. I mean, like John Dodson hits as hard as a featherweight, for Christ's sake. So when you see what he does to people, like, I mean, he knocked out the current bantamweight champion, T.J. Dillashaw. And T.J.
yep,
Dillashaw is one
sure
of the
did.
best around right now. He's an amazing fighter. And John Dodson just ran right through him. And Demetrius not only fought him and beat him, but he did it twice. The second time was even more convincing. The first time he was, put under a lot of pressure. So I don't know how people can hate on Demetrius the way they do, or just ignore him because the guy's special and like you really don't want to miss a fight or any kind of sports event where the best around is competing. Like to me, it's just like it's a privilege watching someone who's the best at anything. Whether it was Michael Jordan in basketball, whether you loved Wayne Gretzky or not in hockey, you had to admit the guy was amazing.
Right.
You know,
Some
yeah, that's
people
how I
just
feel.
don't want to do that. It's just so weird. let's step on to the next event. Like, a lot of people are gonna say, like, hey, this is a fight that wasn't supposed to happen, but it happened. UFC
UFC
217.
217, Bisping
Yep,
versus
Bisbee,
GSP.
St. Pierre. Like, honestly, that fight really wasn't supposed to happen, and I'm gonna go ahead and say it as well. But I am actually glad it did happen because of the return of George St. Pierre and
Me
just
too.
getting to see him fight again.
Oh
I'm
man.
just gonna like say that flat off the right off the bat. So you
Yeah,
can
well,
take it
right
past
here,
there.
same here too. I rooted against that fight, but I was like, both times they made that fight. I mean, actually, they made that fight three times, and then they took it away once, and then they gave it back, and then they took it away again. They lied about George St. Pierre, like like they tried to put George St. the blame on George St. Pierre when it was obviously their fault, like calling a press conference without having a date or anything is ridiculous. But like then they tried to blame George St. Pierre for it taking so long. Like not he's always said not before November. They tried to put the blame on him for wasting time or being scared. Whatever. So, but what a great event! That to me is one of the greatest events ever in the UFC history. It was just another feel good card. We had two great cards in a row. Well, actually,
Three
four.
championship fights as well.
Yeah. And I mean, every fight had a stoppage. I think out of the 17 or so fights we had that night, there were only two fights that didn't end in a stoppage of any sort, whether it was submission or knockout. So
Yep.
that's exceptional.
I mean, it's just so hard to speak about the card because it's like in between George St. Pierre fighting Michael Bisping, winning the belt, and TJ Dillashaw coming back, getting his belt back, and Rose Namajunas knocking out Joanna Jędrzejczyk. It's just probably the craziest card that I've probably seen in the longest
No, it
time
was
considering, you know,
stupendous, man. It was just unbelievable. It was just so much fun. And the usually what happens is, I mean, you see it in basketball all the time. The
hmm
better the teams are that are facing each other, you always run the risk of it being low scoring affairs because these teams will cancel each other out. But UFC 217 was so magical because the higher up the well the ladder you want, so to speak, you went, the the more they the more exciting they got. And sometimes often like that it's the opposite. It's like the more skilled the fighters are, the more cautious they'll be, and the harder it will be to finish them or to get anything done. So but it was so special because the higher up it went, the more the stakes, the more the more the skilled the fighters, the more exciting it got. It was
right.
unbelievable. I mean, like freaking Rose just tearing right through Joanna or Joanna, whatever you want to call her. I mean, Joanna's great and everything. However, like she had nothing for Rose that night. I did not expect to go that way. Like I remember like trying to pick, and I didn't pick because I'm a fan of both girls, both women. But I did say like whatever happens, I will not be surprised. If Rose beats her, I would not be surprised. And of course, nobody'd be surprised if Joanna did what she does usually. But I just had this funny feeling. Like I'm a big Rose Namajunas fan. So I've been watching a lot of her videos. I've been watching her train with Valentina Shevchenko, you know, and people did, that did her some good, but like nothing could have prepared me for the way she went about her job. Like I thought for Rose to win, she'd have to like push Joanna up against the cage or trap her, either
Right.
take her down or or whatever. But
Or at least submit
yeah,
her, something different that would be expected, not something
yeah,
like that knockout. Like that was crazy.
she outstruck one of the greatest strikers in women's history. And I mean, Joanna's striking is unbelievable. It's a beautiful thing to see. And yet, Yeah, like nothing. Like right off the bat, almost right off the bat, she got dropped, and then from then on, it was just it was all Rose, and Rose got got that win in the most spectacular way you could ever imagine. And then the second title fight of the night, and that was huge too, was T.J. Dillashaw versus Cody Garbrandt, and that was an amazing fight too. Like, wow, like Cody almost had Dillashaw, like he almost put him out of there because he dropped him. Like TJ's toughness and know-how and expertise got him out of that trouble, man. He pulled it out, man. It was second round. Like as soon as he landed a head kick, it was you knew it was going to get interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Especially it's like, you know, for something like a head kick thrown at, Joanna, you would think
Yeah.
she'd be able to like see that coming from a mile away, considering her background.
Yep.
But I mean, hey, that's really when it comes down to it, that's MMA. What can you say?
Mm, yeah. And then the whole people love narratives now, but I'm glad I heard about it. I didn't get into it because it's kind of most of it is just silly stuff, but like the whole Dillashaw falling out with Team Alpha Male and then calling them them calling him a snake and all that bad
Crazy
stuff. It was a
nonsense.
real shame because like TJ deserves to be respected. That guy's awesome.
Right.
And like it was just a wonderful thing to watch him finally get to that stage in his career where he can try and fulfill his potential and fulfill his dreams and stuff, and it's just so good to see him back on top. And
Right.
he's one of the fighters I love watching. I could watch that dude all day because he's both very competitive and super duper um, like talented. He's one of the most talented, well-rounded fighters in the UFC to this day. But the UFC never gave him the rub or the shine or the help that he needed. So
Nope, nothing. And it's just so weird because a lot of people don't think that TJ Dillashaw is well rounded as he is because he's over there, knocking people out or TKOing people and everything, but then they forget
exactly,
he also has, really great jiu-jitsu and amazing wrestling because they don't get to see it.
exactly,
So, I mean,
exactly.
it was more than likely going to have to take TJ Dillashaw like two something more defenses or something to finally get people to realize like, hey, like TJ Dillashaw is really, really, really good. If not like in the same league around like Demetrius Johnson good. Because TJ Dillashaw can do just about the same stuff as Demetrius Johnson. We just don't know how well Demetrius Johnson can do those things or how really great his skills are because Demetrius Johnson is still improving. Take that
Exactly.
as
He's always
anybody
learning,
might.
always improving. He never stops training, just like GSP, just like so many, well, not so many, but like the greatest champions of yesteryear. Like they didn't give a
Right.
shit about, financial gain or, having the flashiest car. So it was really straightforward.
So and that's why it's like right now, yes, TJ Dillashaw could be considered up there amongst the Demetrius Johnsons and the John Jones and everything. Not quite there yet because of losing the belts so fast and everything, but skill wise, he should be considered up there. The longer he has the belt without losing it again, but I'm not gonna say Demetrius Johnson because with Demetrius Johnson, you just never know what's going to be next. You have no idea at all, and that's just how it goes. Eventually, people will finally come to see T.J. Dillashaw as an elite champion that he is, as long as he continues to defend that belt, which he more than likely will. other than facing like Cody Garbrandt again within the next two fights, which is probably what they're going to try to push.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, yep. So, I mean, that's UFC 217, and our next card is, well, I want to say Bisping versus Gastelum and everything, considering what happened there of Michael Bisping just getting knocked out, which is what a lot of people wanted. But that's not the card that we're going to go with. We're going to go with UFC 218, Holloway versus Aldo 2. Cyrus, how did you feel about that card? I mean, I don't know. I'll go ahead and just say it. UFC 218, I really believe that was a really, really overall good card. I'm going to have to just go ahead and say that it was a 7, other than seeing Max Holloway, Henry Cejudo. Again, yes, I said his name. I love the guy. I think the guy has great potential. He's super amazing, considering, even though he lost in the fashion that he did to Demetrius Johnson, Henry Cejudo he's just too good to ignore. Watching him fight, watching that fight between Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje, well, Gaethje, that was just an amazing fight. Them just going at it nonstop. Another fight of the year for Justin Gaethje. But I mean, how much longer can Justin Gaethje actually take that type of damage? I mean, it's gonna eventually catch up with him. But it was
I
still a
don't
fun
even know
fight.
how he's still around. He's still fighting, and he looks fine. And that guy's taken some punishment over the years, man.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to watch. But that fight, it was still, as an MMA fan, it was still fun to watch. I just feel concerned for him. That's what my problem is. It's like once the damage starts getting too much in a round and he's like stumbling around on zombie mode. I as an MMA fan and just as a person, I start to get concerned for his actual long term well being. So it's like I'm just gonna say this in advance. Justin Gaethje, if you're listening, if you're out there, if anybody's listening and you see him, tell him thank you from the solo fighter guys and everything. But we're concerned for his health. There. It's already said.
Yeah,
It's out there. It's done. But yes, watching that card. No, in a matter of fact, I'm going to give this card a 9. I
yeah, me
personally
too.
love the crap out of Max Holloway. Like I've been telling people for the longest time, Max Holloway's going to be champion. He's just that great and he's that good. And people just need to overlook what happened when he fought McGregor. Not because, like, hey, don't pay attention to that, but because back then he came out and said it himself. He was training with people out of his garage, but yet was
Exactly.
still
He
somehow
wasn't the
winning
Max
fights.
Holloway we know today. He was still
Yeah,
a really awesome fighter, and he was game. But
right.
and
He
people
is, definitely not the
he
Max
was not
Holloway.
the fighter we know today, and he was injured in that fight. Like he had problems. So
Right.
if they ever fight again, whether it's at lightweight or featherweight or even at welterweight, Max, watch Max put a beating on McGregor. Like
Right.
there's so
I'm
many
picking
ways he could beat
Max
McGregor.
Holloway easily.
Sorry.
I like if they fight again, I'm picking Max Holloway easily.
Same here. Same here. I'd pick Max Holloway over quite a few lightweights as well.
Right. So, I mean, hey, it's just but yeah, that card, getting to see Jose Aldo, fight again, still consider him one of the greatest fighters at featherweight and everything, or just all around one of the greatest fighters, regardless of his losses and everything. It was good to see him fight again,
Yeah,
and then watching
losses shouldn't count against him that much because he was amazing, man. 9 years
right,
unbeaten,
you know,
7 title defenses in the UFC, like 2 or 3 more in WEC. That
right,
guy's one of the greatest ever. I mean, definitely, no
and
doubt about it.
then that co-main event between Ngannou and Overeem. Yes, it was like supposed to be a heavyweight slugfest, which is exactly what it turned into, and produced one of the most prolific, knockouts that I've seen in a
Yeah,
while,
knockouts straight
which
to the
makes me
moon, huh?
weird because I also like Alistair Overeem a lot. But just to see him get knocked out like that, I probably just sat down
Frightening,
there
huh?
silent in awe at what just happened.
Yeah. For a second there, I thought that Ngannou had like broken his neck or ripped his head off. It was just so many, and it took him a long time to wake up, man. It took a very
Right.
long time for Alistair to wake up.
Like
And yeah,
it
that was
was
one of the most
scary.
spectacular and frightening knockouts you'll ever see.
And that was just kind of like the signaling, like, yes, Ngannou was already talked about, was already being hyped up by the UFC and all that other fun stuff. But just seeing that was the indicator, like, this has gone way past keeping him below rankings or out of the title contention talk. Like, there's nobody else that's doing what Ngannou was out there doing. Like,
Absolutely.
and then that led to the fateful UFC 220, but we're not there yet. But
Yeah.
watching him on that card, just seeing like this highlight reel of a card was just amazing. And watching Henry Cejudo, do what he does, you're looking at like some of the most you know, potential of fighters put on this card here that still have a high amount of like fight potential in the future.
Absolutely. And I mean, that second fight it's funny, it ended in the same round, the same way, but it was a spectacular fight. It
Yeah.
really was, just like the first one. It was, back and forth. Jose gave all, gave it his best shot. You know, he gave
Yep.
Max all that he could handle, and Max just ate it and just went, just was relentless. And I mean, like, if you think that's a bad style for Jose Aldo wasn't the most durable fighter. He would slow down, but he never stopped. And he didn't stop in that fight either. He didn't quit. The referee had to stop the fight, and he took a beating. It's like the first fight, but he wasn't gassed or anything. But like, just imagine a guy like Max Holloway, what he could do to a guy like Conor McGregor, who is known. Like, if anybody knows anything about fighting, they know that McGregor has no cardio, has no endurance, and you know what? In many ways, he has no heart. Like, the best thing I could say about that ridiculous event he had with Mayweather, the best compliment I can do for him is point out the fact that I thought he showed heart in that fight. Usually he doesn't. He actually showed heart because he lasted till the 10th round. Like, against Max Holloway in any weight, whatever he fights. If he ever fought Max Holloway has so many ways of beating him because he could either just wait for him to start running out of gas and then go for it then, or he can just lay a beating on him right then and there. Like, if there's any, he's one of those people. It's just a bad matchup for Connor. He's longer than Connor. That's not always the most important, but when you're as good as Max Holloway, yeah. When you have cardio that can last for days, that's a problem too because he can make McGregor chase him, and McGregor, if he chases him, he'll be tired. No, man, it was a great fight.
Right. And then that's what that card was just amazing. Just the amount of fighters that they have on that card that are future potential champions still and everything, and then seeing what they can do. It, yeah, that card was just a 9 for me. Just loved it.
Great card. Like I said, we had like they didn't promote that card properly, the fight card properly, but great another great event, exceptional event.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, that was definitely 9. And hopefully a lot of people watch it. And hopefully a lot of people are just like, even just taking notes out there and everything. And like, when they decide that they're going to miss cards and everything, look at the quality of the fighters, look at the potential of the fighters and everything like that. And and make the determination based on that. Sometimes not based on just the UFC promos or highlight reels, because as you've seen, UFC puts out these reels of fighters that they just want to promote to market money, not based off what their actual potential is in a long-term MMA career. And that card right there was one of those cards where it's like the potential is just insane just from those some of those fighters on that card. So,
Yeah, I mean, I pity you if you only get excited about the fights the UFC promotes, because they weren't in the business of promoting fighters. They promoted two people last year. That was Conor McLeprechaun McGregor and the Predator, Francis Ngannou. Those are the only two fighters they promoted. The rest, and I mean, one of them didn't even fight. Ngannou at least fought like 2 or 3 times last year, which is, how he got his title shot. But no, man, apart from those two, the UFC didn't promote anybody. They didn't do shit for their roster. They spent their whole time promoting Conor and Ngannou, and then put all their eggs in that exhibition nonsense he had with Mayweather. So yeah, but that's 4 or 5 great events in a row as far as
exactly.
like pay-per-view cards go. They were really good. And this
Exactly.
one was no different.
Now, the funny thing is, this next fight wasn't a pay-per-view and everything, but it definitely was a card that people needed to see. And a lot of people skipped it. Fair enough, because they didn't believe that the card was stacked enough or built enough. But there's still about 4 fighters on this card and everything that just need a little bit of the spotlight. And that was Ortega versus Swanson.
Oh man, great event, great fight, great main event. Yeah, man.
Exactly. I mean,
Swanson gave him all he could handle on the feet, and Ortega just kept going. Just kept walking forwards, trying to get that. Trying to get some submission holds and stuff.
right.
He almost had him
I
in the
mean,
first, and then
it, it, at that fight, it was just yet again, like Cub Swanson and everything. Yes, Cub Swanson looked like he basically had that fight. I mean, like Cub
yeah, he
Swanson
did.
gave it all he got, like you said, and Ortega just kept on coming forward. Cub Swanson, almost at any point in time, given 2 or 3 fights, can always step back into title contention. Like
I agree.
that's just how it is. That's how it's been most of his career so far. And but then it's like then you have Brian Ortega, you know.
Uh, yeah, what a great jobs the Gracies have done with him, man. That kid's special, really special. Lots of fun to watch. Just keeps getting better. His striking's getting better every time as well. I mean, obviously his striking wasn't good enough to compete with Cub,
Right.
but Cub is one of the better strikers. He's one of the greatest featherweights ever. So what do you want? He's Jackson Wink, world class level athlete. So there's no shame in that. But like that choke, man, wow.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. And I mean, and then yet again, speaking of potential, as usual, you have Ortega. Like can't even I can't even imagine the depth of how good Brian Ortega's jiu-jitsu really is. And that's a
Yeah,
scary thing to actually think about, like as an MMA fighter, where you're like, oh well, you have to think about the Gracies and how good their jiu-jitsu is, and how much they really know compared to how much they actually show. And when I see
exactly.
Brian Ortega, I think just about the same thing. Considering that
Yeah,
that
he did that to a black
he has
belt.
Gracie
Cub
training.
Swanson's a black belt, by the way, in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, Cub Swanson is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and even from the first round, the look on his face was just not a look that you normally see from black belt jiu-jitsu practitioners. It's just not the look. And then even in the second round, when he actually gave into the sub, it looked like something that he never expected. Period. And it wasn't like he was like very very hurt or he was just tired. It
Yeah.
just looked like he was just on just a completely different planet in between both of those chokes. And that's a scary thing to like imagine, like how much better is Brian Ortega's jiu-jitsu than a fellow Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt? How much is there? Like, I have no idea. I can't even say. And that's just one of those things where it's like, this is a fight that had to actually be watched and experienced by people in terms of the potential. Because yet again, on this card, there's also Marlon Moraes. A lot of people are sleeping on this guy. Marlon Moraes, they're just like, oh, he's just a what? He's just another, organization champion and everything. But
No,
yet,
that guy's world class.
right,
If you watch MMA and that guy's world class, and he will be fighting for the title really soon. That guy's awesome.
right. I mean, a lot of people discount him because they were just like, oh, it's another champion from another, organization and everything like that. And he's, so small and just new. But a lot of people don't seem to realize that even in other organization, he was still amazing, which is why they brought him over. And he's out there, putting on these amazing displays of skill and striking and everything. And
Yeah, it's just like yeah, just like Ben Askren, just like Eddie Alvarez before him, just like Bibiano Fernandez,
yeah,
is in ONE FC, Ben Askren at ONE FC or at Bellator. It's not because you're not in the UFC that you're not good, and it's not because like even if you fight for a shit promotion, which I'm not calling um, uh, ONE FC a shit promotion or Bellator. I think Bellator's they make their mistakes, but they've got amazing talent there. Like, let's be honest, World Series of Fighting was shit. It was a horrible. The way the promotion was run was horrible, but they had some great fights. They had some exceptional fighters there. They had Justin Gaethje, for Christ's sakes, there.
I
They had
know.
Marlon, Moraes is there. Yeah, I mean, not Marlon Moraes. Sorry, uh, Marlon
David Branch.
Marlon Vera. Sorry,
Then they had David Branch as well, two division champion.
exactly, exactly. No, they had a lot of world class fighters on that in their roster, but they just couldn't get their proverbial shit together and do things properly. And okay, I'm not going to get into it, but they also had like some really iffy stuff with a fighter manager being their chief matchmaker. Ali Abdelaziz, who's just so rotten, so corrupt, it's unbelievable. But whatever. That doesn't mean that Marlon isn't good enough. That doesn't mean that Justin Gaethje isn't good enough, and it definitely doesn't mean that Ben Askren wasn't good enough either. These guys are, they easily could be champion anywhere they are. Eddie Alvarez already proved that. Luke Rockhold proved it for Strikeforce. Daniel Cormier proved it too. So
Yeah.
all that UFC shit. And that was the event where he nearly ripped Aljamain Sterling's head from his shoulders with that knee, right? Gerald?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I just had to think about it for a second. I'm like, yeah, that's when the one where Aljamain Sterling nearly lost his head, and he's currently making his comeback videos because of it.
Yeah, you see who he got matched up against.
Yep.
Brett Johns. That's going to be a good fight. I love
Crazy.
Aljamain Sterling, man. Talking about taking a a bad defeat like that on the chin, man. He actually made some gifts himself about it. He had no, what a great guy.
Definitely a great guy. And I mean, and yet again, it's like even losing Tamar Moraes and everything, Aljamain Sterling, he still has the potential to be he still has the potential to be either a top three, top five, or even a potential champion and everything. He just keeps
Yeah,
running into these situations where it's like he has striking. He can knock people out. He
yeah, he
has
has.
wrestling. He has
He has.
submissions. He
And
just
his
keeps
wrestling is
he's
excellent. His
excellent.
grappling is excellent. No, he's a really good fighter. It's just they're giving him I'm going to call it the Michael Johnson treatment.
Right.
Michael Johnson is an elite talent. He's amazing. He's got some of the best boxing. He's got some of the fastest hands. He's got knockout power. He's fast. He's strong. He's a great wrestler. But if you keep on matching someone up with like the worst matchups you can think, they got to take losses. And then there's luck and there's bad luck and all that. But it's like if they treated Conor McGregor versus like they treat these others, Conor McGregor would have never made it. So yeah, that's the other thing I'd like to point out. Aljamain Sterling just he fights nothing but absolute monsters at bantamweight. So that's why
Right.
he's had a few setbacks. What's important is not
And
the
that's what
set.
I mean. That's exactly what I was trying to say. I'm like, Aljamain Sterling, he's an overall really, really good fighter. He just keeps getting put in these situations and everything where one little tiny mistake will basically cost him the fight. Like even in his coming up
Yeah.
fight with Johns, it's going to be the same thing for him. It's not like where I'm just gonna go ahead and just go put this name out there. What's Conor McGregor's training buddy that we both seem to have a problem with?
Artem Lobov.
Okay, Artem Lobov. It's kind of like if you put a fighter in the ring with Artem Lobov and everything. If you make a mistake against Artem Lobov, we don't expect you to get knocked out. We don't expect you to get submitted and everything if you make one mistake against Artem Lobov. But the people that Aljamain Sterling fight, that has fought, you make one mistake and his night's over. And that's the type of fighters that Aljamain Sterling has gotten back to back to back.
No, you're absolutely right. That's why I call it the Michael Johnson treatment because Michael Johnson's going through it right now. He just got choked out. But I mean, he went in on a horrible run at lightweight, and he was a contender. Make no mistake about it. He went from fighting Nate Diaz, which is a tough proposition for anybody, especially a motivated Nate Diaz,
Mm-hmm.
and he lost that fight because he was too emotional, but it was a great fight. Then he went and fought Dustin Poirier, who was on a ridiculous run at lightweight. I think he'd won like 5 or 6 in a row. And he got knocked out in less than a minute by Johnson. That's how good and dangerous his hands are. And then, he also got robbed a couple times. Like, when he fought
Yeah.
Beneil Dariush, he'd won that fight. And, they just give him, yeah, he won that fight. And he should have gotten the win, but they call it the other way, which was a disgrace. And now like after that he fought. I mean, for Christ's sake, look who he fought, man. Then he fights Habib. Then he goes from Habib to fucking Justin Gaethje. And then when he decides to take a break from lightweight to cut weight down all the way down to featherweight, which is no easy feat. And he suffered for that weight cut. And who does he fight? He fights fucking. He fought what's his name at featherweight? Darren Elkins, who's a monster, who's a guy nobody wants to fight at featherweight. It's
And I
like,
mean, I can understand him taking that fight, considering that he's just like, Elkins is going to stand and trade with him, and he thinks he could get the better of that fight. And I understand him taking that fight, but this is Darren Elkins. Like, never underestimate that guy.
yeah, man, no, never. And I mean, there's a couple people who are saying like he could win the title this year, and I can't disagree with them. That guy's so tough, and he's also really good. But the biggest thing about him is his heart and his toughness. He just doesn't give a shit, and he'll keep going forwards. And I mean, like basically, like okay, I went way off topic here, but my point was that they're not treating Aljamain Sterling right. They're treating him like Michael Johnson, and of course, he's gonna get losses.
See, and I definitely agree with that. But I mean, it's really, as Aljamain Sterling goes and everything, it's what can you really do? Because really, he is actually somewhere around there in the top 10. And he's fighting all of these fighters that are basically stacking in his division. And all of these fighters, you cannot make a mistake against. Like, putting him out of, like, the top 15 in itself will be a complete discredit and disservice to the UFC.
You're right.
Like,
You're absolutely right.
yeah, it just the matchups. And yes, you're probably right that they are giving him the Michael Johnson treatment, but even Michael Johnson, like, where else is he going to go right now? Like,
Right.
you can't give Michael Johnson number 30 ranked fighter. Like, that would make no
Well,
sense to anybody.
well, you shouldn't, but you can. They just
Right.
did against Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
they do it all the time. Like like they have done it, and they don't like. There's no sense to it because, like, on the one hand, you got Dana saying, "Oh, there's no such thing as a tune-up fight in MMA," where he'll put like his champions, or like a champion returning from long injury or a champion returning from a bad loss, and he'll put him in with another killer right from the off after them being out of action for like over a year or sometimes 2 years. Um, and then on the other hand, he books a fight like Valentina Shevchenko versus Cachoeira. So, like, make up your mind.
yeah, and that's the thing. That's just like it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna put on more fights like that. Like, please don't, just
Yeah,
don't do that.
like the only time I agree with a matchmaker like actively, constantly trying to get you to lose, to try and like basically get you a loss is when you're a champion, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to like that's your job, whether you like the champion or not. Even if you like the champion, it's like he's a champion, so you have to get him the toughest, most dangerous opponents. The
Yep.
opponents where almost like the matchmaker will look at your weaknesses and try and find a fight that'll exploit that. That's your job as a matchmaker. It's gone like upside down. Like the little guys, like Darren Elkins and Michael Johnson and Aljamain Sterling, they're getting the dogs of war, and then they're looking for like the easiest matchup for their champions. They're
Yep,
so
pretty
cautious.
much. It's just just a little bit of that craziness there, and
Yep.
that's what it just doesn't make sense.
No, it does not. It does not. Lots of things don't make sense,
Right.
these days.
So, well, no, yeah, no, that's just one of those cards that I just believe like a lot of fans actually have to go out there and like look at and pay attention to, considering the potential yet again. And even though it wasn't a pay per view, the potential was definitely there in
Oh
between
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Swanson
No,
and
definitely.
all
You're
of those
absolutely
guys.
right. It was one of the best fight night cards of the year.
Exactly. So, I mean, that brings us to our next event, UFC 219. I'll let
Last
you go
event of
first
the
on this
year.
one, sir. Actually, was it? Was it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
last pay
yeah,
per view event of the year.
yep. It was actually, yeah,
New Year's Eve,
yeah,
man. I mean, just before New Year's Eve. What an
yeah. I'm trying to remember
awesome.
the date. I was like, was it?
Yeah, it was the 30th of December
December.
30th.
Yeah. So, what do you think about this event? What do
Oh,
you think?
I enjoyed it. It wasn't the best, and there were a few fights on there that weren't up to scratch, if you will. But I enjoyed it. I mean, I guess I also enjoyed it because I could like the anticipation between Holly and Cyborg. I couldn't
Hmm.
wait. But no, it wasn't a bad event at all. It was pretty fun.
All
And
right.
the main event was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. Even though like the girl I was rooting for didn't managed to win it, it was still an amazing performance, and she should have no shame. Holly should be very proud of what she did because she not only did she go the distance with the most one of the most feared women that's ever lived, she also forced that woman to become a counter attacker. Like Justino spent more time defending and trying to counterattack than she ever has in her entire career. Because Justino is no counterattacker. She's a
She's the
brawler. I
pressure.
mean, I'm
She's a
not saying
pressure
she's not.
fighter.
Yeah, exactly. She's a pressure fighter. I'm not trying to rain on Lakers fan. I mean, sorry. I'm not trying to rain on Christian Justino fans on their parade because I'm sure they were really happy. But I mean, what Holly did that night was amazing because I picked Holly to win because I thought Christian Justino was going to go in there and try and destroy her and just run through her, and
Mm-hmm.
that would have opened up a lot of stuff for Holly. Christian Justino was almost not hesitant, but she was like,
She was
she fought like
cautious.
she was cautious. She was very cautious, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, for people to say, oh yeah, Christian Justino just, like ran through Holly. No, she did not. It was a lot closer than people think it was. Like, okay, eventually, yeah, Christiane won that fight, and I don't have a problem with her getting her hand raised at the end, but it wasn't as, like some people said, oh, yeah, it was 50-45, and every round was a 10-8. No, I don't agree. And with the people that scored the first two rounds for Holly, I don't even have a problem. I don't even have a problem because she controlled a lot of that fight against the Feds. And you're
Right.
supposed to be scoring. So, yeah.
I mean, yeah, eventually Cyborg took that fight, and I am one of those Cyborg fans. But I believe that Holly Holm was definitely going to give her way, way more problems than a lot of people believed. I'm like, yes,
Oh
Holly
my
Holm
God,
used to
yeah.
kickbox. She's not a kickboxing champion, but she knows how to kickbox, and she's a
Oh yeah,
boxing
yeah.
champion.
That's how she started
So
combat sports, kickboxing.
right, and the funny thing is, I was saying about that fight, I was like, is Holly Holm boxing, championship boxing better than Chris Cyborg's, like high level kickboxing. And the funny thing is, both of them have a high level of skill in between both their kickboxing and boxing. It just seems to
That's
me
true.
that in the striking department with hands, that Cyborg has a lot more power than Holly Holm.
Oh yeah, much more, much more. I think the only time Holly can kind of rival Christian Justino or Cyborg is with the kicks. Like
Right.
when she lands that left kick, it's nasty, man. I mean, like there's professional UFC fighters who've said, especially professionals who come out of the Jackson Wink camp, they say like she used to drop men with that kick. So
Right, and that's fair. That's way more than fair, considering how well she executes that kick. Like you don't see it coming, and it just like it seriously looks like it hits you like a mini car. Whenever you see somebody get hit with that kick, in between her amateur fights and everything, to even when she hit Ronda with it, like it looked like somebody was getting hit by a miniature car right in the face. And so I could see how it could drop men. And but yeah, like her kickboxing just was not good enough to keep up with Cyborg. Like Cyborg is way more elite at kickboxing than Holly Holm. So it's like that took away Holly Holm's most surprising and offensive, you know, power striking in that fight. Because Holly Holm doesn't have that knockout power, even though she has the skills to counter and have way more precise boxing than Cyborg. It just took away
yeah,
that whole power element for Holly Holm there. But it was an exciting fight to see in terms of matchup and how they use it against each other.
and man, does Holly have a chin, and man, does she have heart, man. Most of all, she has heart because
Yeah, a lot of heart, and it was really really awesome to watch. Two high level champions and everything like that in their own respective rights fighting on that main card. I mean,
Yeah,
still, we'd even talk about the co-main event yet for that one. I
of
mean,
course,
really,
of
Khabib
course.
coming back and taking on
Yeah.
Edson Barboza. I'm pretty sure at that point in time, like whenever they announced this fight, 80% of MMA fans had to feel really bad for Edson Barboza. I'm one of those 80% of fans that felt really bad for Edson Barboza. Like, how did you feel about that fight?
You know what? I feel really bad for Edson Barbosa.
Oh, okay. All
when
right.
the when the fight was made, I because Edson's such a good fighter, such an amazing fighter, and so how can I say this? He as good as he's been improving the last few years. Like his takedown defense is amazing, is better
Mm-hmm.
than ever. His knees, like he had this new technique. Whenever you try and take him down, he try and get you with a knee. Like he knocked
Yep.
out Vanille Dariush that way because he went for a takedown and caught him with the knee, just flush. It was one of the best knockouts of the year last year. But I didn't actually initially. I didn't feel bad for him. Um, I thought it was a great fight. I thought I also believed that Khabib was going to win. I thought it was going to be like a really rough, tough fight because I was thinking like Khabib's been out of action for over a year now. He had a bad weight cut, like ended up in hospital instead of fighting at UFC 209. So maybe he's got, like remaining issues. So, I was thinking, man, it's a really tough matchup, but I still expected Khabib to make it. But Jesus Christ, the guy who came out that night, came out and fought. That was like one of the best performances from Habib I've ever seen. And I mean, I've seen tons of them, but it's just he was relentless. And yeah, by the end of the first round, I felt really bad for Edson Barbosa.
Right. I mean, as soon as they made the matchup, all I could think about was what Khabib did to Michael Johnson. And Michael Johnson is yet again another really amazing striker and everything.
That's true. That is true. You're right.
And I saw that same thing in Edson Barboza, where Edson Barboza is yet again another really amazing striker. And I said to myself, if even if Michael Johnson doesn't use the same type of striking that Edson Barboza does with, like with his kicks and everything like that, and doesn't get that much power in his hands between Edson Barboza's kicks, that takedown defense between both of those fighters does not seem to be on par with what is needed to stop from being taken down by Khabib. And I said, this is
No, you're
going to
right.
go very badly.
You're absolutely right. It was just Habib is a monster. Like Habib, honestly, like I think he could win the welterweight title one day. Like that's how good his grappling and his wrestling and everything and the way he puts it all together, the way he's just so relentless. Like I honestly would pick him versus like you put him versus Tyron Woodley for the welterweight title, I'd pick Habib. That's how much respect I have for Habib.
Okay, all right. You know what? That's I would not disagree with that and everything, but I'm not going to agree with that. I see you out there, Tyron Woodley. Don't be mad at me.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm
But
not mad at you.
but I mean, you know what? And that's why I'm like, I can't disagree with that. It's let's be honest, let's be fair. I can't disagree with that at all. Khabib, in between him saying that he wants to go down a weight class or that he can go down a weight class, I don't believe that and everything. Any division that he's close to or around, he can be champion in.
No, honestly, there's guys like that, and I think Habib's one of them. And yeah, man, look, this is, I mean, like, I I find myself getting more and more frustrated and annoyed by Tyron Woodley's nonsense every day. But that doesn't mean I don't recognize that he's an amazing athlete, and he's an exceptional MMA fighter. It's just, it's the other stuff I can't stand. It's just getting ridiculous now. But like Tyron Woodley is a nightmare. He's, you know, but this is how much I respect Khabib. That's all I'm saying. Like one
Right,
thing that
right.
Tyron Woodley lacks is a killer instinct. That's one of the main criticisms as a fighter you can give him is he, sometimes he lacks that finish the fight. When he gets it, it's spectacular. I mean, just ask Robbie Lawler or Kim, Stun Gun Kim. Like he knocked
Uh-huh.
them out with one punch. Oh yeah, what he did to Josh Koscheck, Jesus Christ! But he doesn't usually fight that way. That's why people get on his nerves. Then he opens his mouth, which is even worse. And some of the stuff that he says is just ridiculous. But he's a great champion and he's a great fighter. It's just Habib is something special. He's like an alien or something. Like, what he does is just
Just
it's
really
I don't even
crazy.
know how to describe it. It's all the best way I can describe it is relentless. He doesn't stop. But you know what?
Now, are you saying
Edson
that he
Barbosa
goes
is one
to
tough
the
son of a
wrestling team?
bitch because he took a beating for 3 rounds. He never quit and he finished the fight. Like wow.
Definitely kudos to him, but I just really still felt really bad.
Uh, Pardon me, I'm yawning. Yeah, no, I felt bad too, man. It was, it's not nice to watch, and I like Edson. You know, I really like Edson, but like now, like he does come away from that fight, from that beating, with even more respect than ever before in my eyes, because for a long time his biggest weakness was not lack of heart or quitting. It was freezing. Like sometimes he'd go in against the fighter and just like freeze up.
Yeah, or looked like he
It
was
was, I
too
think it
busy
had something to
planning
do
on
with
his
something
next move
between
or
the
something like
ears.
that.
Yeah, like when he fought Michael Johnson. Hey, our old friend. Like that was one of Michael Johnson's greatest performances because he just went in there and just took it to Edson. Edson was on the back foot all night. It's like this I don't know what it is, but it's like but there's nothing like I love Edson. I think he's a great fighter. He's awesome to watch. So sometimes he'd lose to fighters in a way that was just like you were wondering like what's wrong with him? Like is he injured or is that like some guys have it between the ears like like they have a problem with just get like starting and then they just stay in the
Right.
whole fight like that. Like, and some people say, "Oh, he has no heart." I never thought that, but like now, no one can say that. Anybody who dares say that tired, like lazy line is gonna look like a fool because, like,
Which they
after he's
deserve.
yeah, yeah, no, 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 great fight, but I mean, yeah, at times, especially in that third round, it was hard to watch because yeah, he took an unholy beating from Habib. He took the beating that Habib wanted to give Connor.
You mean the beating that Connor deserves?
Yeah, yeah, he does deserve one. He kind of started to get it with Mayweather. The referee was there to save him.
I guess he had to save him for the rematch.
Yeah. Oh no, man. Let's not damn ourselves, man.
Yeah, let's keep away from that one. All right, let's
Oh
move on.
geez.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but then we got to see, Daikisi and everything. To see he was actually the big hype train that they were trying to push him to be, or that he himself was pushing himself to be, and see
Yeah.
that completely come apart. Which is
Yeah, man. It
sad.
was
Yeah, sad
yeah.
because they could have promoted him, and
Yeah, they
they
have
kind of
actually.
did, but his
Yeah,
ego beat
UFC
him.
Europe did anyways. No, but I mean like and it wasn't that much of a mistake. It's just he's had a couple losses now, and he kind of fucked up, but he's an exceptional athlete, and I still think he's going to have a great career. He's just very very young. Maybe he got he let the hype get to his
Yeah,
head, and everything, and started thinking he was better, and maybe like when you're that young, sometimes the focus like maybe he wasn't training the way he should have been. I don't know, but like Dan Hooker's no joke, anyways. Dan
no,
Hooker's not known. He's like James Vick.
yep,
Very few people know him because, again, the UFC. are shit at promoting fighters. They they don't take care of fighters properly, so they don't take care of this Kiwi fighter who's awesome, who's long, who's dangerous, who has amazing chokes. Just like James Vick. James Vick has been crying out for top 10, top 5 fight for years, and they don't give it to him. It's like the James Vick is elite at lightweight. He's a freakishly long lightweight, and he's an awesome fighter, and he's fun to listen to, and he's fun to watch, and he never puts on a boring fight, and they won't give him. And same thing goes for Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker's done some amazing has had some amazing performances, but they just never give him any kind of promotion. I mean, something as lousy as, oh, this guy is from New Zealand. His name's Dan Hooker, and here are the people he's beaten and how he's beaten them. Like they don't even do Dan Hooker highlights, and Dan Hooker highlights are pretty awesome because he's had some great victories in his MMA in his UFC career. So it wasn't that much of a shock. But yeah, no, Diakese looked a bit flat. And the other thing I noticed about that fight, Diakese, and that's why I think like maybe he didn't train like he should have, because every like time he was in a difficulty, he just muscled through it. Like whenever those the grappling situations up against the cage or on the ground, um, Hooker was using pure technique. Diakese was just using that strength, that athleticism. After a while, that's gonna drain you because you're gonna be so tired because you were just like muscling through everything. But yeah, no, it
Right.
was a good fight. I'm still pretty high up on Diakese. I'll definitely look out for his next fight. But maybe he needs to move to the States. Maybe he needs to move to an American top team or a TriStar
Or AKA.
or an AKA. Yeah, and they do wonders for that kid because that kid has a lot of talent and he has like nasty. He's got some nasty moves. He hits real hard too. And he's got a lot
Right.
of. I mean, his athleticism is off the charts as well. It's like Bobby Green. Bobby Green, for years, I loved watching him, and I still do. But then he went, he had a bad run of losses, and now it looks like he's coming back. I mean, it was a draw versus Lando Venata, but it was one of the greatest performances of Bobby Green's career. Maybe Dan Hooker can, look at that guy because that guy's an amazing athlete as well.
And that's what I definitely agree with there. And I mean, he'll come back. I just think that he fell into a lot of like how they were hyping him with the kick and
Yeah,
everything like that. He bit off a little bit of his own ego in that fight. And I mean, but yeah, Dan Hooker definitely no joke. And it was just really nice to watch because that card was still pretty amazing considering the amount of decisions that were on it. Because then we had
yeah,
Cavillo versus Carlos Barja still.
yeah. That was a surprise. That was surprising. Like Esparza, wow, like like nobody gave her a shot in that fight. Cynthia Calvillo is an amazing athlete. Like she's gonna do great things. There's no doubt about it. But like
Right,
people seem to completely dismiss Esparza, and Esparza was the first strawweight champion in UFC history. You don't become champion if you're shit. And people were talking
right,
about her like she had one foot out the door, like she was, whatever. And she reminded everybody why she was, why she'd worn that belt even though it was a short while, she still wore it. She still
right.
choked out Rose Namajunas. So you can't be a shit fighter if you have a win over Rose Namajunas. So it was nice to see that, but it was tight. Like it could have gone either way. Really, it really could have. But it went the way of Esparza, and good for her.
Yeah, it was
Good for the
definitely
Cookie Monster.
a nice fight to watch. And then I mean, then we had the return of Carlos Condit versus the
Yep.
fighting robot Neil Magny.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
That was a bummer. That was a bummer, and I still thought he won. But then again, I just might be biased.
you might
I'll
be, you
admit
might
that.
be. The funny thing is, I
Yeah.
wanted Carlos Condit to win. I'm a
Yeah.
long time Neil Magny fan because of the
Uh,
guy just fights and fights
yeah,
and
I
fights
like
and fights.
Magny. I mean, nothing against Magny at all, man. Like, I don't root against Magny. It's just, it's Condit, right? It's a
Right.
natural born killer.
Natural work in it. It's like I wanted Carlos Condit to win that fight so bad, considering how long he'd been gone and just
Yeah.
everything. Just like be like, yes, Carlos Condit, thank you for coming back. Thank goodness you didn't retire. And I'll just like get back in the ring, get something going, get some motivation with a win. He didn't get it, but yeah, still, just to see him, get in there and fight was just nice. It was really amazing to see.
No, it
Just
was
kind
great
of
to see him back. It's just the
right.
fight itself was a bit, it was weird. It was lousy. It was a
It was
bummer.
not on par with Carlos Condit does.
Yeah, even Neil looked weird in that fight. Like, I mean, not
Yeah,
weird, but like he looked a bit hesitant. Is hesitant the right word? Like,
I think
it
so.
wasn't the Neil Magny I'm used to. Like, maybe, like maybe it was like he was respect for a legend in Carlos Condit.
Yeah,
Maybe. But
I mean,
like one thing about Neil Magny is he's good at everything, and he's seamless. Like, he goes from one thing to the other. He can grapple, then he can start wrestling, then he can go from wrestling to striking to kicking. He puts it all together really well, and he didn't seem to be able to do that night
yeah.
either.
No, well, and that's
But
one thing that's like I wasn't really upset about, considering how long he'd been gone. And
mm,
like a lot of people could shake off ring rust and be like, "Oh, it's not a real thing," but then you see it and you realize that it is a thing, even with some of your most favorite
like, some
fighters.
people can shake it off, not everybody.
Right,
And yes, it is a real thing. Ring rust is a real thing because you see it happening to everybody. Some people deal with it like exceptionally, but they're the exception, not the rule. Like
right.
John Jones and Dominic Cruz and GSP,
Mm-hmm.
they're some of the greatest ever. So yeah, and even like, I mean, GSP is a special case as well because GSP, I honestly believe, never stopped training.
No, never.
Yeah. Dominic Cruz is probably the most amazing because he was away for nearly 3.5 years because of injury.
Right,
Like,
like he
he
couldn't train
literally
the way that
couldn't
he's
train.
supposed to train the way that he needs to.
Yeah, because he had surgery after surgery, and like, when you have surgery, you're not going to train. So that was amazing, and like, for him to say that, that's fair enough, man. I'm not going to argue with Dominic Cruz, but like most people, you tell them, oh yeah, you'll be away from the sport for 3 years, then you come back and you face a champion or you face a high level fighter like Neil Magny, they'll tell you, man, what the fuck are you doing to me? You're trying to mess with my career. And they'd be right to. So yeah, you know, yeah,
Right.
no, ring rust is real. Ring rust is very real. It's just like some people are so exceptional or so mentally tough or just so expert at whatever they do that they can just come back. I mean, look, ring rust is so real that it even cost Michael Jordan. Like, when he came back, he wasn't quite ready. Like, when he left basketball for 2 years. When he came back, he was still awesome. He still did some, but he was still rusty. There were things that he wasn't as sharp as he could have been. So ring rust is real. Ring rust is absolutely real. Happened to anybody, even the best. So, like, even
Right.
Ronda, when she came back from after a year, you could see she was rusty. She
She was hesitant.
and
She was anxious.
yeah,
Like everything that she should not have been in a return fight against the champion. Like
yeah. No, ring rust is very real. And I mean, Carlos has had some bad injuries, so that also doesn't help. He had his knee completely torn up. That also, like, slows you down after a while. But what I'm happy about is that he's back and he's going to be fighting Matt Brown next. That's going to be a heck of a fight because that was one fight I always wanted to see. I think they made it once or twice, and every time it fell through because of injury. But Matt Brown versus Carlos
right.
Condit, that's a fight to headline any card.
That's a brawl about to happen.
Exactly. Highly technical, high high quality brawl, but yeah, a brawl. Savage.
Oh, I mean, like both these guys aren't going to back down. I mean, even if Carlos Condit backs down even a little tiny bit, Matt Brown is not backing down. Like this
Yeah.
is going
And
to be a
if Carlos
dogfight.
Condit backs down, it's just to fucking throw his leg into your head. You know what I mean? It's just to make space. Like he's not backing down. He's just like taking a step back to send something even more horrible your way. So it's gonna be amazing.
Right,
Like I both love it and I hate it because I love both those dudes. So I'm not gonna be rooting for anybody. I'm just gonna be rooting for mayhem and violence and just watching it. But no, I'm not rooting for anybody in that fight because I love both these dudes and they're two of my favorites all time. So yeah, it's gonna be crazy. Um,
right,
Matt Brown was on the
definitely.
Joe Rogan show recently.
Uh huh.
It was a great episode. I love that dude. Like you hear him talk about MMA and his views on life and MMA and performance enhancing drugs, and like he had some very interesting things to say about Johnny Hendricks as well.
Yeah, you know what? I think right about now, a lot of people have very interesting things to say about Johnny Hendricks. You know?
Yep, yep. Okay, well, yeah, because
Yeah.
it looks a certain way, doesn't it? It's like
It's undeniable. I mean, it's very very
right,
undeniable. Nobody wants to say it, but
almost overnight, almost overnight.
yeah,
It's and like and the fact that he made such a huge deal about it when GSP offered, like, look, let's both get tested. He said, I'll pay for your testing, and
yeah.
George, once again, he had the right ideas. He didn't want to, he went with the right people, the best drug testers in the business, because they're not in the business of ruining your career. They're in the business
Being
of making
fair,
sure that
finding
you and your opponent are fighting someone clean. It's called VADA. And when GSP offered that to him, he fucking freaked out. He weaseled out and tried to make it look, started throwing accusations like, he just stank the place out. It was, and I mean, let's be honest. Johnny Hendricks is a head case as well. Like some of his reasonings, and I don't know if you've ever seen him discussing weight cuts with the media, and like nowadays, like you can't go to an event he appears at without him challenging some member of the media to cut weight with him and shit. So,
right.
yeah. So there's always that. There's always the fact that he's a head case, and maybe he got into his own head and just kind of lost it that way. But it does look, it's the optics are funny, man, because it's almost overnight, and then ever since like things have changed in the UFC as far as like drug testing, his performances have just gone down the drain, man.
Down the drain. Not just a little bit down the drain, but
Mm.
like off
And I
this
ain't even
planet down the
talking
drain.
about the fights where he got knocked out. Like that's
Just
one thing.
performance wise, overall.
Yeah, like the worst fight I've ever seen him in was versus Neil Magny. That that fight. It was actually the same. I believe it was the UFC 207 card.
Hmm. Maybe.
And yeah, I think I think if I'm not mistaken, it was UFC 207. That's what it. Wait a minute. It was either 206 or 207. I'm pretty sure it was 207. And I believe he opened the pay per view. They were the first fight on the pay per view of the main event, the
Okay.
main card, and that was the worst performance I've ever. It was like the very last bit of the fourth round. In you remember his second fight where he lost his title, the second Robbie Lawler fight,
Yeah.
and like most of the fight from rounds two to most of four, he was like amazing. He was so smooth, and he was piecing up Robbie Lawler, especially his legs with those leg kicks and his kickboxing and his Muay Thai. It was sweet, man. Like his timing was perfect. He was catching Robbie at will, and then all of a sudden he just stopped. He just went for a single leg, but it's not going for a single leg. Like he hung onto his leg, pushed him up against the fence, but wasn't trying to do anything. He wasn't
Right.
trying to drag him down or kick, or kick the Robbie Lawler's other leg from underneath him. He wasn't trying to, pick him up. He wasn't trying to take him down. He was just holding onto the leg and covering his head, like literally sticking his head between Robbie's uh, between Robbie's legs, so Robbie couldn't get to him. That happened in the last part of the fourth round, which cost him the fight eventually. And then most of the fifth round, he was just stalling, and it was like that whole fight with Neil Magny was a mixture of that, like stalling,
Mm-hmm.
or just like completely having no clue what to do. Like sometimes he'd stand there, and it was almost like he was standing in front of Neil Magny deciding, like, should I take him down, or should I stand up, or should I just run, or should I, kick his legs, or should I, it was like he had no clue what to do. That was probably his worst. To me, that was the worst performance of Johnny Hendricks. Like, I'm not a big fan of Johnny. I'll mock him as much as whatever because of his antics before and after UFC 167, and he's extremely entitled, and I hate that. Like, and but he's not a horrible person by any means, and he, like when he was at the top of his game, like I never missed a Johnny Hendricks fight because it wasn't just the knockouts. Like he was getting better every time, and by the time he
Right.
fought,
Like he was a wrestler. Like he could scramble out of like jujitsu submissions, all types of stuff.
oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
high
yeah, yeah.
level tactical stuff.
He had an iron chin as well. Like he could take punishment as well, and not go down. Like the last few fights now he has, but like that's like like what we mentioned before. Like he's fallen off a cliff at a very weird moment.
So I mean, hey, like I mean it just is what it is, and a lot of people know it's not something that's being said out there in mainstream media,
Yeah.
mainstream MMA media, but it is what it is.
Yes, it is.
Is what it is. I mean, but yeah,
Yeah.
those were definitely the highlights of UFC 219 for me, especially it being the last card of the year. Like
Yeah.
it was definitely a highlight.
It wasn't as like amazing or as exciting or as eventful as like a 217 or a 214. I mean,
Right,
217 has something about it that will probably never be equaled, or it will take a long time for it to be equaled. As in, three champions entered that event, and all three champions left without the belt. All three contenders, challengers, left with the belt. Like the belt changed three times in one night, and I don't think that's going to happen for a long time.
no, not for a long time unless they like stack it like that and just bring in like like crazy competition and everything. But I don't see three champions right now that are easy to beat for
Uh-uh.
anybody.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I mean,
No,
the easiest
I
one that I
mean,
see, the easiest one that I do see, like let me rephrase that, is sadly, I'm going to just go ahead and say it, but Nico Montano. And that's
oh
because,
yeah, but to me, she's not
she
champion. You know what I mean? She's a belt
right,
holder. She's wearing a belt, but she's no champion. I'm sorry,
right. Like
and I have nothing against
other than
that.
seeing her fight to to get the belt and everything like that, I don't know what level of champion, or belt holder that she currently is to
Yeah,
say that, if she were to come up against somebody like Valentina Shevchenko, if she'd be able to hold a belt at this current moment, I say that she would be the easiest champion to knock off currently. Please don't hold this against me if you're listening to this. It's not a dig against you, but the level of fighter that is coming her way in Valentina Shevchenko
yeah,
just looks like an obstacle that I don't believe she could get over. Any other champion
yeah.
from
No,
DJ to
yeah,
TJ to Woodley, to DC at 205 to Stipe and everything to in between Whitaker. I just don't see those champions coming up against a challenger that's going to challenge them in the same way that
well,
would be so close that
Yeah.
you could pick a challenge.
Well, I definitely put like if Rockhold and Whitaker do fight, and Whitaker's still champion, I'd expect Rockhold to beat him. But that's not
Right.
because Whitaker's not a good fighter. Whitaker's an amazing fighter. It's just, to me, in my personal opinion, Luke Rockhold is the best middleweight around. Like
Okay. Yeah.
but that's it. But that doesn't mean that he's weak. It's funny. Rose Namajunas is brand new, and people have already made Joanna Jędrzejczyk a favorite in their
Yep.
rematch. But I don't see it that way. I think Rose could easily be strawweight champion for a very long time. I'm
Could
not saying
happen.
that, that I'm not writing off Joanna. I'm not writing off Joanna at all. But
Right.
I'm saying you shouldn't be writing off Rose. Like, people already did it the first time, didn't give her
Yep.
a chance. But like doing that, you're playing a dangerous game, because Rose is she's there, man. She's right there. She got there, and it's not just like physically; it's also mentally. Like, mentally, she's rock solid, man. It's fucking beautiful to watch. Like, the place she's in, and I mean, like, let's say Rose defends her title successfully.
Hmm.
Like, then I don't see Joanna staying at strawweight. And anyway, she detailed it, and it didn't come across as like she was looking for excuses. She detailed that she had a really hard time making weight, and it's been a while. It's been happening quite a few times where she's struggling to make the weight. I don't see her staying at strawweight if she doesn't get the decision. Like, if she doesn't get, if she's not successful in the rematch, I see her just moving up to flyweight, women's
Right.
flyweight, and try to get a belt there. And I mean, like, when you look at her, going back to Montano, there's a lot of talent at 125, and there's a lot of girls that are at 125 who, and I mean, even Rose. What if Rose decided, oh yeah, I want to do a champion versus champion fight? Nico Montano's still holding the belt.
Right.
Rose would do work on that woman. I've seen her. Like, she's solid, she's strong, she's tough. But Rose is on a whole other. Like, those girls. It's not a UFC thing either, because there's girls in
I
Invicta
mean,
that would do work
yeah.
on Nico Montano.
And it's like anybody out there listening, don't listen to us and think that we're just saying that Nico Montana doesn't deserve to be where she is. She definitely deserves to be where she is, considering the fights and her going through the tough outs and winning that belt.
Yeah,
Like, it's
well,
just as
more
a new
power to
champion,
her.
yeah. Just as a new
More
champion
power
and
to her.
everything, we just don't know how good she really is when she steps into the cage with already ranked competition.
Oh, oh, absolutely. No, look, the thing is, like, the UFC don't do a really good job recruiting um, people for their reality TV show, the Ultimate Fighter. The one time, I mean, like, in recent times, the one time they really did do a great job was when they created the women's strawweight, because that was a bit different. Those were all professional fighters who'd had a long. I mean, they were veteran fighters.
Right.
I think it was it season 20? Yeah, the strawweights, where Anthony Pettis and Gilbert Melendez coached. That was I mean, I still couldn't stand the reality TV parts of it. I just, like, fast forwarded through it. But, like, if you watch that season, like, the level was different. Like, they had a lot of veterans. I mean, Rose was there. You had Esparza. You had a lot of really top
Yep.
veterans, top elite fighters, and you could even see it, like, during the season, because they were almost like, yeah, like, we don't need all that extra coaching. We know what we're doing. Like, there were two or three belt holders in there, or long-term veterans, women who'd
Yep.
seen it all
Lisa
before.
Forrest was
That
even in
was
there.
different. So when Esparza won the title at the end of the season, it was legit. Like,
Right.
she was the best around until Joanna came along and changed that. But, yeah, I mean, you had Tisha Torres there.
Yeah.
You
Tisha
had,
Torres was even there. So, like, that just goes to show, like, that tough house was no joke.
no, not at all. Not at all.
So yeah, we're not discounting like Nico Montana at all. We just
No, I'm
yeah.
just saying, like, I don't really consider her a flyweight champion. I don't because I know flyweights in the Bellator who would give her like fits. Who would beat her. There's girls in Invicta, and I know she's fought in Invicta, but Invicta has flyweights that would beat her. What's her name? And she's a novice, but Mackenzie Dern,
Yeah,
she's a
on her way.
flyweight. Yeah, like she's very raw. She's a real high,
High
a
level
really
physique.
exciting prospect, but she's still a prospect. She's more, she's still kind of like a rookie. So you're still gonna have to look out like how you match her up and stuff. You're not gonna like put her in a title fight like tomorrow, and she's about to make her UFC debut. If
Yep,
she ever
after
fought
Yoder.
Nico Montano, I'd pick Mackenzie Dern. Like
Uh huh.
again, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just from what I see. Then again, what do I know? I'm no expert, whatever. I'm just telling you my truth. Like I'd pick Mackenzie Dern over Nico Montano because Mackenzie Dern's jiu-jitsu is so nasty and it's so
Like yeah,
fast.
yeah.
Like
If she's not able to do it on the feet, when she could get it to the ground.
yeah, and she recognized that very quickly. As like she'll trade, and as soon as she feels like uncomfortable, she'll just take it to the ground, like so quick, lightning quick, and from angles you don't expect. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, but that definitely was, as a capstone card of the year and everything. That's how I feel about it. I think it was a pretty
Yeah.
good card, and to end off the year, they did a good
It was a
job.
good year, performance wise. We had some great. I thought performance wise, like the cards were even better than 216. 216 was one of the most successful years because of all the pay per views sold. I
Uh huh.
mean, a lot of the cards were left a lot to be desired. Like 217 was way better. It just wasn't promoted. It wasn't promoted right, and because everything was dominated by MMA was dominated by the will they
Sensationalism,
won't they Mayweather
McGregor
McLeprechaun
nonsense.
before, and even after it was over, people like that's all they were talking about. That's all Dana would talk about. He was still wearing his McGregor T-shirt, McLeprechaun boxing T-shirt, and then talking about like, oh yeah, there's going to be a rematch. And it's like, shut the fuck up. Like president of the biggest MMA promotion, and all you can talk about is how good Connor did, huh?
Did in boxing. Like,
So it
okay.
was yeah, whatever, man. You know what I mean? But what? No, it was a great MMA year in the UFC and Bellator. Bellator had some. ONE FC had some great events. We saw the retirement, the swan song of one of the greatest welterweights ever
Yep.
in Ben Askren. It's just the only shame, the only sadness I had when he retired because I was happy for him. He's been a great champion. It's like we never got to see him in the UFC.
Right. I
But
mean,
like,
that's probably a good thing for a lot of fighters. I'll just put it like
oh
that.
my God, yeah. For 90, like, I mean, it's a good thing that he's friends with Woodley because if they ever fought, yeah, Woodley'd be in trouble. I honestly believe that.
Yeah.
Unless Woodley would manage to catch him real quick and fast. But then Askren has a great chin on him and he recovers very quickly. But yeah, no, Askren, like, it's funny. Like, we were just talking about Johnny Hendricks, but Tyron Woodley is like a better, more athletic, stronger, more explosive version of Johnny Hendricks.
Yeah.
Both good
By
and
fight
bad.
two.
Because yeah, but the reason I'm saying this is that both good and bad because they're both stud wrestlers. They're two of the best wrestlers of their generation in
Yep.
wrestling. But they both have that in common as well. That in MMA they're horrible wrestlers. They're horrible mixed martial arts wrestlers. If you see what I mean.
Yep.
Like they can take you down, but once they take you down, they can't really do much. They don't really do much if you think about it. Their ground and pound is like okay,
Yeah.
like
Like,
considering that you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Like, hey, I'm just gonna hit this guy.
Yeah,
Maybe the ref might think I'm doing damage enough to call this fight, but they're really not.
yeah. Or they'll just lay in someone's guard and not really do much, not really go for submissions. They grab a pound. That's what I'm saying. So yeah.
So yeah,
Like Yoel Romero, people like bitch about like, oh, he's so easy to take down. He's for such a great wrestler. Yeah, he's so easy to take down because he doesn't give a shit. Because he
right.
gets right back up as well. Like Rory took Tyron Woodley down, and
Yep.
Woodley couldn't get back up. And Woodley tried to take Rory down multiple times, and he couldn't. It was like, and don't even get me started on like Johnny Hendricks' nonsense. But yeah, it's funny. Like they're very similar, just that like Tyron Woodley is very obviously stronger, very obviously uh, more explosive, and obviously, I mean, I guess now hits harder.
Yep.
Although, Johnny Hendricks with the magic sauce got to a point where it was getting pretty frightening. Like when he knocked out what's his name? I think the most. I mean, he knocked out quite a few people, but I think the most frightening one was Martin Campman because it
Oh
didn't even
yeah.
look like he hit it that hard. It really didn't look because it wasn't wound up. It was just like
Like
almost looked like a jab.
toss of a punch.
Yeah, yeah, it really did. It was like and the guy just went spark out. And Martin Campman was tough as nails, and for him to just go spark out like that, those are the knockouts that I find really frightening. It was like a pop, and the guy was out cold, just like what's his name, doing that to Frank Mir, Shane Carwin.
Yep.
It was like 2 or 3 inches from his face, and he hit him, and the guy was out gonzo. So yeah, those. Uh, but yeah, no, it's interesting.
It's very interesting. But
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So I mean, yeah, like so far we're already into the year 2018 and everything like that. So far the fights are going decent. I'm not gonna say great.
yeah,
Like other than UFC 220 and everything, I'm going to have to say that so far the cards have been decent, but they seem
yeah,
to be getting better with DC versus Stipe coming up. I mean,
yeah,
Amanda Nunes versus Cyborg if they ever get that going for real, and
yeah,
yeah, I mean, Khabib versus Ferguson.
yeah. That's gonna be great. That's gonna be great. It's bittersweet though because they shouldn't be fighting for. Well, they. I'm glad to see them finally fight, but at the same time, they should not be announced as a fight unless you're gonna strip Connor. That was ridiculous. But yeah, if it's a fight, I'd love to see. I don't know who's gonna win. I have nothing but respect for both dudes. I'm actually a fan of those dudes, so I'm not gonna pick. But yeah, if you're gonna match these two dudes up, you have to. You can't do one of those ridiculous, pathetic press conferences where you're refusing to answer questions and saying, "Oh, why is everybody being so awkward asking these questions?" You know, because like you're saying, you know, like at least they said it's not a ridiculous like that. Part of me was always happy that 209 fell out. That I wasn't happy he got sick and that his liver shut down. Jesus Christ, that was awful. But the fact that it fell out, that it didn't happen, because that was an insult to both men. Like
Right.
Tony El Kukui Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov fighting for an interim belt. It's just wrong. It's disrespectful. It's insulting to the sport and insulting to them especially. Just because like the belt holder again, I refuse to call him champion, is being a coward.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah,
Maybe that will all change this year
yeah,
whenever they strip McGregor or he just actually comes out and fights like he's supposed to this year. So we'll see. We'll see.
yeah,
But so far, fans aren't very hot on him, and that's expected. That's just how it goes.
yeah.
You can't
No,
ride the
we'll see.
McGregor train forever.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he could just,
So,
give him, he always said, I want all the belts. But he should have also said, I just won't fight for them. So,
right.
give him 10 of those things and let him fuck off and not come back if that's what he wants to do, because it's ridiculous. It's a bad look. It makes MMA look really bad because MMA has never been about that kind of shit. It's never been about the cult of personality. It's been about, the best fighting the best, and you do your best, win, lose or draw, but you take it like a man or a woman, and you just move on. You take it like a warrior. There you go.
Right.
And he ain't no warrior, man. He ain't no warrior. So
Sad.
let him, like let him have his reality TV show. That's what he wants, and let the real fighters get back to fighting.
Soon.
Yeah.
Let's hope for this year. Let's hope. Let's
Yeah,
hope.
well, I do.
But yeah,
I do. I always do. Hope springs eternal, no matter how bad and how ridiculous things get, and how ridiculous Dana White's comments get. I always hope for the best for the sport because it's a special sport full of special men and women.
exactly, exactly. But yeah, like I said, that just wraps up our whole year of 2017. You know, hopefully you fans are out there watching the UFC event tonight and everything, and having fun because we might be talking about that soon. So I mean,
Right.
I
That's
guess
a
it's just
huge one.
yeah, a huge one. You all should be watching it
Rocco
right now.
versus Romero.
As a matter of
Yep.
fact, you all should be listening to us and watching the fight at the same time. So just
Yeah.
putting that out there. So other than that, I mean, I guess it's just time for us to wrap it up. Cyrus, do you have anything?
No, that's it. It was lots of fun recording this podcast. It's been such a long time. I'm glad we could do it.
Right, right. Feel the same way. But fans out there, thank you for joining us and everything. And I mean, like, just go ahead. Don't forget to just give us give us a little bit of that love out there in the MMA world, and leave a comment. Give us your thoughts on what you feel about the year of 2017 in the MMA world, and just let us know what you think. So, I mean, this is G,
Absolutely.
and that's all I have to say. I'm gonna have to say I'm out.
Cyrus out.
All right, talk to you all later. Thanks for joining.